The Maryland Midland Railway was formed in 1980 to operate a portion of the former Pennsylvania Railroad Frederick Secondary between Taneytown and Walkersville, Maryland. By 1983, the railroad had purchased the former Western Maryland East Sub from the Chessie system between Highfield and Emory Grove, giving birth to the modern-day Maryland Midland system. In the 1990s, there were talks of revitalizing the now abandoned former PRR line between Taneytown and York, providing an interchange with Conrail, but the sheer cost alone was enough to put an end to the project. In 2008, Genesee and Wyoming, a shortline and regional rail operator, would purchase a majority of the company, owning all of today's 81-mile system, and putting an end to the classic blue and orange paint scheme that rail fans loved. Instead, we have the orange, black, and yellow, which has taken over short lines across the country. Since its inception, the railroad has seen a dramatic rise in business, especially from Lehigh Cement's Union Bridge plant, the company's largest in the Western Hemisphere. Join me today as we follow train UBHF from the Maryland Midland's yard and shops in Union Bridge upgrade to Highfield, with a train of heavy cement in tow. It's 8:40 on July 7th, 2024, and Buffalo and Pittsburgh SD50, number 5019, is in charge of the westbound UBHF. The crew of today's train is nearly finished building their train out of the yard, consisting of one center beam for structural building solutions to be dropped en route in Thurmont, and 35 loaded cement hoppers out of Lehigh Cement, bound for interchange with CSX in Highfield. The rest of today's consist is another Buffalo and Pittsburgh SD50, number 5020, followed by two Maryland Midland SD40M-2s, number 3450 and 3449. With UBHF departing for Highfield, I swung around to Y Road outside of Keymar, where the old Pennsylvania Railroad branches off from the Western Maryland main line. The close track is the Western Maryland East Sub, while the far track is the connection to the PRR line. But would barely beat the train up to Rocky Ridge, where the 4 EMDs now have the train rolling. Thurmont, Maryland is located just to the east of the Blue Ridge Grade, which westbound trains must climb to the summit at Highfield. By the time I had arrived, the crew was already cut away from their train and dropping the center beam at Structural Solutions, the spur branching off to the right. On the left is NVR Building Products, who has 2 empty center beams ready for pickup, which will be tacked on to the rear of today's train. With the car spotted in the derail line, the crew eases back out onto the main line before coupling up with the rest of their train. While the crew finishes picking up the center beams, I would head to Sabillasville Road, where the old Western Maryland flies over the cars below. It wasn't too long until the 4 EMDs were beginning their thunderous climb up Blue Ridge Grade. It wasn't until Sabillasville that I was able to catch back up with the train as they rounded the curve into Fort Ritchie Road. At Highfield, the Maryland Midland interchanges with CSX. CSX maintenance of way crews are in the process of finishing up some work on a switch on the interchange track, so the UBHF would pause for a few minutes. In the distance, CSX local L15107 has finished dropping off the pickups and is waiting in the clear for the Maryland Midland to drop their cars. L151 operates Monday through Friday between Hagerstown and Highfield. With the MOW crews in the clear, UBHF throttles up towards the CSX Hanover subdivision. Once onto the main line, the Maryland Midland then shoves east towards the interchange siding. After leaving their cars on the main, the UBHF returns back west and towards the western siding, where their cars for pickup have already been dropped off. While the UBHF picks up their cut of cars, so too does the L151. With their inbound cut of cars picked up, SD40M-2, number 3449, is the new leader for the return to Union Bridge. By Lantz Curve, the train is rolling quickly downhill with the EMDs in dynamic braking. I would just barely beat the train down to Thurmont. What I didn't know at the time is that they would spend the next 30 minutes dropping the two head-end center beams at NVR Building Products. So, I would wait at Myers Farm for quite some time. Finally, at 12:26, the train coasts through rural Maryland with just a few empty cement hoppers in tow. A farmer was busy cutting hay in the field below, allowing me to capture this picture at the perfect moment as the sun peeks through the clouds. Arriving back into Union Bridge, this would be the last time I would see the old SD40s in action, with more Buffalo and Pittsburgh SD50s arriving onto the property in the coming months. The SD40M-2s certainly had a long life, originally built as Southern Pacific SD45Rs before being rebuilt into the SD40M-2s by CEFX. Eventually, they were purchased by the Genesee and Wyoming and sent to the Maryland Midland, wearing their orange, black, and yellow colors for 12 years. Thank you all for joining me here today along the former Western Maryland Main Line, and I hope you enjoyed the sound of EMDs climbing up and down grade. Join me next weekend for a trip to the Reading and Northern as we chase America's train, the North Reading Fast Freight. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, this is Commonwealth Rail, out.